Hello, this is a Narja guide in 7 minutes designed to arm you with the knowledge to succeed. Let's go. So she introduces two new types of buffs, Voracity and Predation. Voracity states, when hitting with an attack card, 40% fixed heal. If heal is 50% or higher, you get a 30% damage amount dealt by attack cards. When the effect is activated, decrease by 1. Then, moving on to Predation, if in a Voracity state, gain plus 80% damage amount dealt by attack cards. When that effect is activated, decrease by 1. So as you can see, there's an overlapping relationship between the two buffs that Narja can provide. Now if you're a little bit confused with all that reading or what that means, let's now hop into a live example. So here's an example of Voracity. I gain 4 via the attunement effect from Shackles of Hunger. Karmic Flames uses 1 stack. Shackles itself uses 3 stacks. I get healed a little bit for each hit. Let's now jump to an example of Predation and Voracity now together. I use Mealtime. Plasma Missile now, but because of those lasers you can't see the combat log pop-ups. So we deal our fatal blow with a homing laser. We can see that we reduce each buff amount by 1. And in both cases we get the damage amplifications that they were saying before. Let's now talk about her cards on a base level and then move on to her epiphanies and builds afterward. So starting off with Shackles of Hunger, it is a multi-hit attack and you gain Voracity on draw. Bottomless Hunger is a cost reduction where the next 2 times you activate Voracity, you decrease the cost of a random card in hand by 1 for 1 turn. Voluntary Control is an if-else card, so if you have less than 6 stacks, you gain 6 Voracity. Else, if you have more than 6, gain 2 Predation instead. Domain of Voracity is an AoE attack, and it also increases tenacity damage by all targets hit by 100% until their next Ravage. Mealtime is your big heal and buff card where every time you activate Voracity, it reduces its own cost by 1. And it also adds to the heal amount in total. Keep in mind the keywords that it's also retained in unique as well. And with Mealtime, I want to clarify real quick that the cost does reset after you play it. So I'll show you this example. So we use Voluntary Control to draw our Mealtime, and then we build up our Voracity stacks. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. We play our Mealtime. We skip even further ahead to when I use Voluntary Control to draw it again for the second time, and we can see that the cost is reset back to 6. So just keep that in mind. Next is her ult, where it's just 10 Voracity, a big AoE, and then the condition, if Mealtime is in your graveyard, you gain 5 Predation. So the obvious 2-step here is you play your Mealtime, then you play your ult. I'm going to toss this in. Here are the fragments I'm using. So with that out of the way, let's move on to the Epiphany board and talk about build ideas and paths to get you started. So here's all of our Epiphanies laid out. And side note, this segment took a while to put together, so maybe pay it forward with a subscribe, mayhaps. Alright, so if you're planning to farm other units, Narja does have 4 unique Epiphanies. So as you can see here on each row, she has a potential for a unique on line 2, line 3, and line 4. So Bottomless Hunger, Voluntary Control, and Domain of Voracity. This can make runs a little bit comfier in Chaos if you're trying to build someone else. So just keep this in mind for mid-run. As for an actual build to go for, you can go for a Vanguard Enabler route. So first you look for Shackles of Hunger, specifically the one that gives you shield, then Bottomless Hunger that gives you defense-based damage, and then Voluntary Control is just whichever one you feel is best. Maybe you get the one that just helps you with your Voracity stacks. And then finally, you pick the Domain of Voracity that just continues to amplify the defense-based damage, right? This will be the kind of build you run with your Calliope, you run with your Amir, you run with your Maribel, whatever it might be the Vanguard that you're using, right? Someone who uses defense-based damage. Even herself, if you decide to build her that way, of course you would change the initial Shackles of Hunger to be something else. Next is the Voracity Spam route, so this is probably keeping it more in line with her vanilla game plan of you're just trying to build as many stacks as possible of Voracity to amplify the rest of your team. So she takes on much more of her, I guess, typically defined controller support route. So we're looking for just the cheapest or most effective ways to build up that Voracity with the Shackles of Hunger. Then Bottomless Hunger, we just go for the straight up 7 Voracity and also the potential to amplify your Mealtime damage. Lead's also convenient because you might be able to coin flip it and play it for free. The Voluntary Control just makes the conditional we talked about before just be a little bit better. And this flavor of Domain of Voracity allows you to get Voracity on Ravage. So with those 2 build paths covered, those are kind of the 2 directions in which you can go in, right? So you play more to her core and just be a buffer, or you build more in terms of like putting her specifically with Vanguard units and becoming more of a like shielder and Vanguard buffer specifically. So next I'm going to talk about the cards that I like to go for whenever I see them during a run, and that's just the upgraded version of Shackles of Hunger, where it's just a stats buff. Next is the attunement version of Shackles of Hunger, then Bottomless Hunger, we've talked about that one before. Voluntary Control, same thing, we've talked about it, but I want to specifically call out the two unique upgrades that it has. So the first one being select one attack card, one predation each time that card is bounced into your hand. So this could be on draw. And also for Serenial, for those of you who have her, it also works on, for example, homing lasers that have the property of them moving back to their hand, right? That counts as giving you one predation stack. So if you mark one of your homing lasers with that, it will in fact give you one predation back. Then there's also the basic attacks upgrade, where every time you inflict a hit with one, you gain one Voracity, and it also gives a flat damage amount buff to basic attack cards. So this is really good with that Chizuru basic attack spam style build. And next is Domain of Voracity. We've talked about the first one, so the next one being that this could be good in the future if there's content where you actually need that extra sustain. As long as you build your DPS up as strong, then you don't really need to sustain. You win the damage race in that case. And next you just have the interesting cards segment, which is just food for thought. You know, give yourself ideas of ways you can make these cards work, right? If you're looking to expand further. That's the end of the guide. There you go. So hopefully now you're armed with the knowledge to be able to play Narja to her strengths, or at least this is a good starting point for you to now explore the character, but having some sense of direction to go along with. So until next time, take it easy, have a good one, be sure to like and subscribe, goodbye.